They're constantly flying in for directions, attack everything so around. The wind does not directly support it, but back away. Below the ground, Tran Hung relies on Buffalo to sense the enemy's position. He's moving. The direction is from north to south 30 steps away. 10 steps above the ground. After a while, I saw no movement. The old man's face sank down. It's impossible. Humans after being covered by domesticated plants. It's rare to be able to stay awake. Why is there even resistance? While he stood still and contemplated, the ground can also be touched. Stop 50 steps away from us and stop moving. I've just finished preparing and started. Then there's the buffalo on the ground. Suddenly disappeared in place. Next, let's go straight to the front. He has sharp eyes looking at them. Wade Fran's spherical SAO, and then you can hold hands and say 5 things. Turn the land into mud. Follow him. The French mainland has a lot of mud. He then formed a shield in front of him. The VA bridge hits this mud screen. It's a little bit blocked. The wind in the back is still going on. The wall is made of mud and gravel. It can help us stop the law. Where it comes from, unknown Kier. Be a little careful. Arrange more strange magic Hoa follow up to prevent. Tran hung on the ground. It also touches all the aesthetics. He chose to fight a battle on the ground. When he got there, he clasped his hand. The top, the positive force controls the lightning rods, immediately stretched out. That's why it's pulled back to the ground. Where Tran Hung was buried, an explosion immediately occurs. Tran Hung quickly emerged from the ground. He just came up, immediately pull out the ruler, straight to the countercurrent fender. Even under the pressure of magic, the obnoxious nature of plants still hasn't changed. Behind the curtain, investment is starting to develop. Dao Di Hoa continued. Tran Hung Lao came without hesitation. Put your ruler up there and shout. The 15th thicket of the torpedo. According to the language, his voice is crazy. Immediately from above, pull the ruler out 4 sides. The thunderous noise. After a while, the new electricity slowly dispersed. The shield also appeared. The next crack quickly broke. Tran Hung saw the person behind. It's not too surprising. He is so clear. Previously, I tried to stop myself from going inside, but then it suddenly changed. He is intent on taking advantage of the land to haunt me. In this place, their house, in this Tai'an district. There's a problem, of course. Tran Hung did not know that. Behind a nearby tree, the Lord is not stopping the practice. What's standing in front of him? It's just an earth body. Jade magic sentence part. Very quickly, Kier's body slowly cracked raw. Radiology takes 2 people as the center. There was a powerful explosion. At the same time, on the other side of a long drink, 2 people in red are sitting here having a few drinks. The dwarf glanced at Han. How did he ask? Someone found out we're in Thailand. Sao bar. He is not a martial artist. You probably don't need to come over. After all, that Fengzi is attracted by you. It is also the owner of one party. I've met a martial artist before. He's certainly not an opponent of the rich. I hope so. Tran Hung, now half-body buried in the ground, said in pain. It's impossible with the current population of Tai'an. You can't give a fighter as strong as you. Hold on. Who are you after all? He looked at Tran Hung and regretted it. If you didn't resist, it would have been nice to follow my master. So now you don't have to die. You're going to die anyway. I will give it to you before I die. Be transparent about everything. I am the head of the Southern Mountain School of Feng Shui, at the request of a master. Before the big day comes, we have to stay calm. Dealing with those who are capable will attract the attention of the laser bar. When Chen Hong heard it, the corners of his mouth rose again. That's clear. Then on his body slowly rose up. And then it turns into a gas explosion. If you see that, you are terrified. This is very fast, Chen's body. Hung stood up again. That's how a flower on a dry tree dissolves. She looks perfect without any hurt. You are covered in air in front of you. The wind could not help but shiver and sweat out like rain. Tran Hung turned his head to look at him. The last question, leave it. I guess you don't know where to ask. Next, behind him came a giant Susano. This is the 7 great traditions of Tai Ching Tao. Than original Tao magic foot. See the fictional giant Kier. The Lord is afraid to pray. Wait, 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 wait. Tran Hung didn't notice him. Directly mobilize Susano, a chef's pet down. This guy just crashed down the side of the river. Han Kier immediately startled with 2 big eyes. The wind is dead. His killer was a remnant of the Teisho. A man walked in front of Tran Hung. Then a hole appeared. Now half a man and half a tree is sitting there. I saw Tran Hung coming. He asked me just now if it was the Taoist. Tran Hung also did not hide. The magic of the French army. The prince heard the answer. He spat out a sip of fresh blood, sighing true nostalgia. The last time I saw it was 2 years ago. Tran Hung also has a little nostalgia for saying Ra. Even though Sao was after the genie of the pure, the army's magic was destroyed. There's no longer a method that AI can learn. If that's what we think, it must be. I am the last member of this community. Haha, luckily, you learned not to give it 7 instructions. A man as strong as you is humble. In a small winter land. To be a martial artist. But it's no better on our side. After I die, the Southern Mountain Sect will die. Chen Hung listened to him, but he did not speak. I saw him in his closet talking again. Inside this court, there must be a child without eyes. It can manipulate the mind in this space. You have to avoid fighting it for too long. If not, even if you win, you will become someone like me. Chen Hung heard him remind and nodded. Thank God, then close your eyes. For him to say. This is also seen as a liberation. Tran Hung stood there quietly for a moment, then turn around and continue the work. The wine sighed. The dwarf was surprised to hear the great Han say Ra. Remnants of Tai Bar Sao. You didn't get the wrong person. That's the ice after we hit the taiga. Old man has led us to track down their key disciple. He's been tormented by us for a long time. It's pathetic. A 1,000-year-old sect born from the Red World. It's finally over here. This is so sinful, he. And at that time, I also said. Between Taish and we are finished. Even if there are fish in the net. Then, after the god of pure magic led the foot soldiers, it is also very difficult to achieve a class VI practice. Or the higher realm, the great Han consistently replied. But I didn't get it wrong. The Minister of Magic is not a soldier. Martial artist East Russia is a key disciple of the Taish. That we let go. Maybe that year while we were hunting. Transmission of Tai Cheng Tao. That person's power is not strong. So with the power of God's grace, I lost him. When the dwarf heard it, he thought and then spoke. You'll protect France later. I will wake up the cold body left in Tai'an district. Han immediately nodded in response. The dwarf quickly closed his eyes. Then the priest closed his eyes. Somewhere in Tai-En, a body exactly like his. There are countless large and small centipedes. Inside the millions, Tran Hung went to the front of a lake. He stood on the shore and looked at the opposite side. The deeper you go into the distortion, the chaos is getting worse. After all, this is what I do. He stood there for a moment and continued walking. Beneath the water, countless monsters were waiting there. I saw him step onto the bridge. They slowly climbed up to block his way back. Tran Hung is very fast. I also noticed their appearance. He quickly put his hand behind his back. Prepare to pull out the simple drag. I think they can catch me. But right now, there's a sound. It made his mind spin. From behind the rock across the lake, the blind boy slowly walked out. Stop shaking the small drum in your hand. Chen Hung was surrounded by monsters right now. But he still doesn't care. He looked at the blind boy and asked, "You created the demons?" When he finished, he didn't wait for the boy to answer. He was dragged into the lake by monsters. Then they come back to the water. Immediately under the water, there was an evil war. After a while, under the lake, there's lightning flashing. Then Tran Hung came up from the bottom. The blind boy right now, his face was no longer smiling. Instead, it's gritted with anger. Tran Hung looked at it silently, thinking, maybe he's the kid that Fengzi was talking about. Say it out. The conditions for collecting the swaps are too harsh. I've only ever met him in literature. See the master arranged in this cave. It's really not that simple. Suddenly, the cliffs next to the blind boy moved again. And then they turned into stone giants. Stand next to it. Chen Shang was a little surprised to see it. After all, the devil is evil, right? Can't let it summon too many helpers. Tran hung without hesitation from below. The water rushed up to deal with the Kier boy. He uses the language of the devil. Order the poles. Lock him up. I want him alive. 3 people took orders, immediately rushed to stop Tran Hung. Chen Shang saw them coming, then jump up and dodge. Then he shouted, DG fell back. According to his voice, up above, there are some waves falling. Straight up on 13 stone people, to eat a full blow of his torpedo. But the stone people, there can be no hurt. They then turned their heads together. Look at him. Tran Hung saw that, in a whisper. The torpedo doesn't work for them, of course. Looks like we have to change it another way. At this moment, the blind boy again shook the drum. I can hear the sound. Tran Hung's movements again became stagnant. Take that opportunity. The stone men came together again. It is the most primitive method of attack. Directly surrounding. Use your body and strength to lock him up. Tran Hung also has something to wake up. So that's what Ra is. This is his strategy. First, we have to find out what the hell it's about. To restrain myself. Then take the opportunity to use magic. It looks like a Kier hand drum. Let yourself be distracted from that to achieve victory. Tran Hung was locked inside the rock. At first, I tried to use gas to attack. But after a while, it didn't work. He stopped. If torpedo doesn't work, you're not a geek either, so try this. The world grows very fast. From the rock, a tree sprang up. The blind boy couldn't understand what was going on. Then the Kier tree's buds kept growing. The tree's roots spread across for sides. And then he went straight for the blind boy. After a while, the blind boy was completely locked up by the roots. Tran Hung in the distance saw that it had been captured again. Without any hesitation, using the torpedo through the roots of the tree, attack on the enemy. The blind boy who was struck by the torpedo screamed. Extremely painful. On the outside, the red man came here. Very quickly, he went to the place where he was killed. Look at the body in front of you. He doesn't have too many emotions either. On this side of the road, Chen Xing came in front of him. The blind boy has now been electrocuted. Tran Hung looked at it quietly for a moment. Then take a few more steps. Get close to the captain and solve the problem. Just put your hand up. He felt that something was wrong. Glancing at the back. I only see the lake. A man in a red coat was standing there looking at him. When Chen looked back, he asked, "It's you who kills the wind, isn't it?" Tran Hung turned his cold eyes to the enemy. "It's finally here, the owner." You two stare at each other. Everyone has their own thoughts in their head. This person is a little familiar with the eyes. It's like meeting somewhere. This martial artist is not as simple. Training comes from being full of gas. If you didn't know his story before. He is a dead man, I believe. The two men said nothing. Go up to the bridge on the other side. Wait until the middle of the bridge is about 3 meters apart. Tran Hung asked the leader, "You are the master who arranged this cave, right?" The man replied that there was no one else. Tran Hung asked again, "You have to do something. Let him solve you." To hear these words, the young man in the red coat laughed again. "Solve me, Sao, ha ha ha. Wrestlers are really interesting now. I'm not ashamed to say it." When he finished, both sides fell silent. Then they disappeared together in place. Once again, there was a chase on the lake. Chen saw him running away. Then quickly pull down. Then he developed the Duong torpedo tracing long. A water dragon appeared under the lightning. Hit the man in the red coat on the back. I saw Long in the back. The man threw out 2 centipedes. 2 VA centipedes touched with long lightning and immediately exploded. The water just like that was smashed. The water column splashed. Wait for the water column to disappear. Chen Hung did not see the enemy's shadow. Here hiding under the water, looking up aesthetic. The combat experience is a little bit like a wizard. Although the actual power is limited, a middle level. But it's not that there's no chance of a fight. With a high-class martial artist, the loser is not a loser. Think for a moment. He decided to use some kind of magic. The 4 sandals quickly flew out of his shirt. Tran hung on the water, looking around. It's very confusing. Not right. In the blink of an eye, no more shadows. And suddenly, his eyes were so big. I just saw the water with him at its center. Is not stopping freezing. I saw the ice beating up from under my feet. Tran Hung firmly pulled his foot out of his shoes. Jump out of the way. Look at the frozen water ahead. Tran Hung aesthetic. That was Sao ice magic. I didn't wait for him to think long. In front of him were 3 balls of water. Not waiting for him to react. The wind then used extremely fast poison to spread raw. Tran Hung was immediately frozen in place. Now the Kier just came out of the water. This martial artist is inexperienced. Slaughter with top strategy. Vigilance is still not enough. He said he was slowly closing in. But as he gets closer, he's extremely puzzled. On Tran Hung right now. But there's no stopping the escape gas. Very quickly, his eyes grew up looking up. I saw only one giant hand. He's driving him down. The young man was drowned in the water. Still can't believe it. This is impossible. Martial artist being frozen by his frozen flesh. It's impossible to move the gas. Even if he's 10 times stronger than he is now. If you can't do it, you can't do it. Unless he's already up to disaster level. Or say he's not a person at all. Tran Hung, now behind Suano, once again appeared. The ice on his body is rapidly cracking. After a moment of ice, I was afraid to breathe out. It's dangerous if it wasn't me. But someone else died soon. The ejection doesn't have to rely on the acupressure. This time it's really hard. But also lucky. I have understood your inner circle. If there's no surprise, maybe you're the real thief. It's still on the fence. Beneath the water, young people are also falling into this trap. Amateur of Thai chorus is this. Probably hasn't reached disaster level yet. Remove this option. The answer is very clear. He died in a war with reason. It's just a test kit now. It only has consciousness. The test means before he was alive, he died with regret. After death, we will continue the test while we are alive. Keep it in the world. That can also be explained. The acupressure of the corpse basic test. It's all arranged. The way they move gas. It's not like humans at all. My ice cream doesn't work for him. It's just a normal thing. That the creature is not human. Arranged in the cave of Qin Tianjiang. It will not be aimed too hard. That's why he was able to get in pretty good shape. From which to defeat Feng Fei and the blind Kier child. But your way. It can only stop here. Think about here. Tens of thousands of centipedes came out of him. They form an underwater army. Run to where Tran Hung is standing. Next, he jumped into the water around him. Then they explode together. Tran Hung quickly recovered to pull the incense to the shore and run to. On top of that, his general was also blown up. Then they exploded. Everything has a limit. The French army, although strong. But when there's enough gas, whether you're a human or a demon, there's a limit. Consumption. The cold is far worse than maintaining the legs of the general. If it continues to last, the victory will surely be ours. Tran Hung right now, he also recognized the enemy's parachute. He's staring up at the minister. Not if it continues like this. Even if we had the world's 300-year gas reserves. I can't stand it for long. We have to change a different way of fighting. Tran Hung thought as he slowly walked to the shore. The cold behind is still exploding. His general right now. There are hundreds of thousands of holes. After a while, it finally dissipates. After his minister vanished. The cold is still rising from under the water. Then it comes back to the body of the Kier. Tran Hung saw all the cold faces. Of course, the essence of this yen is the moon. After the appearance, the other looked at Tran Hung. It's rare for a chromatograph to work. He died 2 years like you. That can hide the inspection of the laser bar. Continue to stay in the East as a martial artist. This is really about Ra. It's also unbelievable. Tran Hung heard that and asked again. Why do you know that I died 2 years ago? Whispered in my head. Even when they die, they always know. It is also said that the case exists. Related to them, SAO. Just as he thought, the enemy also has no secrets to say casually. It's not so obvious. Even though you may have forgotten. 2 years ago in the East. We've met before. Tell me, your life is great. At first, you were poisoned by lie. When you go to the pharmacy to buy medicine, I put something in the medicine. But you don't know. On the contrary, the body is healthy.